Hello there, welcome to the Bible Speaks. My name is Supreme BC, and today I want to share some lessons that I learned from Daniel chapter 3. This is one very popular story in the Bible, and you will agree with me once I give the summary. So I'm sharing this because I believe that these lessons will help us in our daily life, because like the Hebrew boys back then, today we as believers are being forced to bow to different kinds of doctrines, different ideologies and beliefs and practices, right? I believe that a proper understanding of this standoff between the three Hebrew boys and one of the most powerful kings in Bible history will teach us how to deal with our own trials today. Just like in the case of this passage, our adversary may be physical, but we should also remember that the true adversary is always behind the scenes. He's stirring and moving things and people without being seen. Of course, we know who that is, right? So, without further ado, let's get into the story. I'll just give a very short summary. So, Daniel chapter 3, talks about King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, whose domain was pretty much the entire earth, and that's why it was called the King of Kings. Now, he had conquered vast lands and territories, so it's no surprise that when he built the statue that was 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, it seems like he likes the number 9, but yeah, that was a large statue. When he built it, he called like people from every land, every tribe and language to come and behold it, and not just to behold it, but to bow to it. And they had to do this when they had a signal. The signal was going to be a combination of various instruments being played. Once they heard those instruments played, they had to bow down to it. This command had a terrible punishment for defaulters. So if anyone didn't bow to the statue, you would be thrown into a furnace. I don't think I have to say furnace of fire, because like, what's a furnace without fire, right? Yeah, so they're thrown into a furnace. Anyways, the command was given and everyone bowed. Well, that's everyone but the three Hebrew boys. They were the odd ones out. They were three and they were odd. Well, I think I'm onto something there. Now, so we're at the point where we want to see the lessons from this story, right? They refused to bow. So what happened next? That's what we want to talk about. Now, lesson number 1 for me is the crowd isn't always right. I'm going to read from Daniel chapter 3, verse 7, verse 8 and verse 12 to illustrate my point, and then I'll give you like an example, a real life example today. Of course, the story is real life, but I'm going to give you an example, that illustrates that the crowd is not always right. Right? Okay. So let's read. Daniel 3 verse 7. It says, "Therefore, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, and every kind of music, people from every nation and language fell down and worshipped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up." 8. Some Chaldeans took this occasion to come forward and maliciously accuse the Jews. And then I think I should just read straight to verse 12. So verse 9 says, "They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, may the king live forever. You as king have issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, drum, and every kind of music must fall down and worship the gold statue. Whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. There are some Jews you have appointed to manage the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men have ignored you, the king. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." So from these verses, you can see that they were the odd ones out, right? They did not follow the crowd. The entire body of people, the entire crowd of people actually bowed down, but they did not follow the crowd. And I just want to tell us that, see, just because it's popular doesn't mean that you have to take part in it. That's the lesson from here. Many times you see things trending on social media, you're tempted to do it too, or there's an illegal way to make money in your office and everybody's doing it. That doesn't make it right. The fact that everybody is engaging in it doesn't make it right. I want to give an example. So some years ago, I think 2001, there was a bomb blast in Lagos, and the bomb blast wasn't really the one that killed many people. It was a lagoon. Now, when something happens, the natural instinct is to run. And many people were running, so people that didn't really know what was going on just followed the crowd, and all of them ended up at the bottom of a lagoon. That's where many of them died, sadly. You don't always have to follow the crowd. Yes, there are times that the crowd may be right, but that's why the lesson from here is the crowd isn't always right. Popular culture isn't always right. The crowd that gathered to bow to Nebuchadnezzar's statue was not a small number, and they all bowed. But these guys knew that, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they knew that it wasn't a popularity vote. In their hearts, in their lives, God came first to them. And I believe that we as a believer, as a human, God should come first to you as well. Right? So, yeah, the crowd isn't always right. That's the first lesson for me from Daniel chapter 3. Moving on to number 2. The second lesson is you are being watched. You are being watched. And I'll be reading from Daniel chapter 3, verse 8. By the way, I'm reading from the Holman Christian Standard Bible. I'm reading from, that's HCSB or CSB. Right, that's the translation I'm using. I love the Bible so much. It's amazing. So, verse 8. It says, some Chaldeans took this occasion to come forward and maliciously accuse the Jews. Right? Now, you would think that in a large crowd with so much people there, I mean, we're talking about thousands of people, possibly hundreds of thousands of people. You would think that they would be, swallowed up and nobody would know, what was going on with the next person. Everybody would be so consumed with the task at hand. I mean, I want to bow very well, not just bow down, but I would want to bow very well in such a way that, it's not be mistaken of whether I actually bowed or not, so that I wouldn't be thrown into a furnace, that kind of thing. But no, somebody decided to watch the Hebrew boys in that mammoth crowd. Now, you may think that you are probably in a place where nobody knows you and you want to do something that is not, you wouldn't normally do, right? If you were home, or you wouldn't do in a place where people really knew you. You may want to engage in stuff that is not worthy of praise, something you are not proud of. But I just want you to know that even if you're in a strange place, you are still being watched. Right? You'll be shocked to find somebody who knows you there. And even if you don't, God is watching you. God is watching you. And even people, as a Christian, unbelievers are watching you. And even if you're an unbeliever, people are watching you and they probably look up to you. So it would be unfair for you to set the wrong example. You are being watched as a human being. The Hebrew boys, they were in the midst of this number of people, and I don't think they even thought about this. I don't think they thought about somebody watching them. Right? I'll give a personal example. So this was 2016, right? I was on an island in one of the south states in Nigeria, and there was an event where I was, playing a major role there, and some people had to work under me. And as the event went on, somebody slid me 3 envelopes. Now, 2 people were working under me, and somebody slid me 3 envelopes, asking that I give the other 2 to the 2 people working under me. Of course, they didn't know that I just received an envelope. They did know. I was the only one who went out to get the envelope. So I came back inside the hall with the envelopes in my pockets. Trust me, I needed cash, and there was a lot of cash in those envelopes. I needed cash, but and I was tempted to take all 3 envelopes for myself. But just as the temptation was so strong, I decided to, not tempt myself further. I just brought out the 2 envelopes and gave to each of them and said, this is for you and this is for you. And somebody just said I should give it to you guys. I have never met them before. I didn't know them before, that day, but I gave it to them. No. Fast forward to like 3-4 days later, when everybody went back to base, to where they were staying. Of course, that time I was serving, so in the town where I lived at that in the town where I lived at that time, right, I just heard somebody calling me Copper, because that's what they call us there, Copper. And I turned, lo and behold, it was one of the people who worked under me, right? And I mean, when I gave them the money that day, she actually told me that, you know, she has worked under different people before that time, and usually they wouldn't get any extra cash, or they wouldn't get, you know, cash. Like they usually knew that maybe extra cash came, or there was an envelope somewhere, but the person who was in charge of them would take everything for himself, right? And I was amazed, I was shocked, and I was glad that I didn't do the wrong thing, even though I didn't think that I would ever see that lady ever again. But I mean, I did. And I'm glad I did the right thing, because I don't know how I would have lived with myself. So I needed to know that, you know, you are being watched by men, you are being watched by God himself. Even scripture tells us that we are a spectacle to behold. We are spectacles to even the angels. That's what Paul said. It's not just apostles who are the spectacles of angels. You know, we as believers are spectacles. We are being watched. So please do the right thing, even when you think nobody's looking at you, or when nobody's there, when you're in the private. Right, so that's the second lesson. Lesson number 3. Beware of the second chance. Now this lesson is quite interesting for me, because of my personal experience, and I'll share in a bit. But first of all, let's read from Daniel chapter 3 verse 14 and 15. Nebuchadnezzar asked them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true that you don't serve my gods or worship the gold statue I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, drum, and every kind of music, fall down and worship the statue I made. But if you don't worship it, you will immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God who can rescue you from my power? Now, these verses 14 and 15, I would want to remind you of something. First of all, God is merciful, and God is kind. God is forgiving, and God always loves to give us second chances. In fact, the entire aim of salvation is to give mankind a second chance. It's to give each and every one of us a second chance to experience his love, you know, to experience him on a personal level, not just as servants, but as sons, right? But we should also know that although God gives second chances, not all second chances are from God, right? Not all second chances are from God. I'm talking about salvation as a second chance. Now, I'm talking about in our day-to-day activities. Now, what do I mean? We know that the devil doesn't come up with anything original. He only perverts and pollutes what God makes. He's a master imitator. He just imitates. So when you get a second chance and you think that it may be God giving you that second chance, you need to look at the purpose of that second chance and see if it will produce a fruit of righteousness. Is it unto God? Is it glorifying God? Is it glorifying God? Because here in these verses that we read, we see that Nebuchadnezzar is actually giving Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego a second chance to bow to the statue. It looks like it's forgiving. It looks like it is God trying to save them from the furnace. That's what it looks like. I mean, and I don't know. It's so tempting. It's really tempting to just bow down and get it over with, you know. I'll give you a personal example. So, some months ago, my wife was ill and we went to the hospital. And she had been treated and everything. Then I went to the pharmacy and I was given the bill to pay. So I went to the accountant to make the payment, and I said the figure. Yeah, let's use 5,200, right? So I'll use 5,200. So I was asked to pay 5,200 naira. 5,200 naira. So that's 5200. So I go there and I tell the accountant, I was asked to pay 5200. I hand her my card. She slips the card in the POS machine and types in 2500. That's 2,500. And I say, no, that's not it. It's 5,200. Then that's what I put. I said, no, you put 2,000. She said, no, so I gave it to her to look at it, and she looked at it again, and she said, that's what I put there now. And I was amazed because, honestly, at that point in time, of course, these figures I'm using are not the real figures. The figures, the actual figure is much more, right? So, of course, I wasn't happy paying it, but I had to pay, right? And this lady was just trying to give me, a second chance. She was giving me a second chance to, go scot-free. And I probably would have. But I had to correct her over and over before she finally looked at it and saw that she had made a terrible mistake, and then she flipped the figures, right? And at that point, at that moment, I knew that, of course, that second chance wasn't from God. It wasn't from God, right? It was a test of my loyalty to being righteous, being upright, even when people themselves are making mistakes repeatedly, So right now, I just want us to know, if you are being given a second chance in any circumstance that you are facing, please check the purpose of that second chance. See if it glorifies God. See if it will produce a fruit of righteousness, right? So that's it for me today. Those are the 3 lessons I want to talk about. In the next episode, I'll talk about the next 3 lessons that I learned from Daniel chapter 3. In this episode, the first lesson was the crowd isn't always right. The second lesson is you are being watched. And the third lesson is beware of the second chance. I hope these lessons blessed you, and I hope you remember these when you're faced with trials and tribulations. This has been a wonderful episode of The Bible Speaks, and I remain supreme. Thank you for listening. Please share this episode with your friends and with your family, and you can also send a voice message with the link in the description. If you would like to send an email, send it to hellothebiblespeaks@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to know how this blessed you. Until the next episode, stay blessed. Thank you.